Welcome to the Sure Group Show, episode 11. Today we're going to tell you what happens at closing, and we have kind of a fun way to do it. I'm actually going downstairs to close on a property right now, and it'll give you an inside look at how the closing process goes, how the seller, how their situation works. In this case, I'll be the buyer, so you'll see how the buyer's side goes. And we'll go down there, film it, and then come back upstairs and kind of show you what went down and what important things you should be looking for.
Hey, I'm Tim. Hey, Todd.
Tim.
Tim Eichhorn.
Tim Eichhorn, all right, nice to meet you. I've done this a bunch of times, Ed's done this a bunch of times, and of course the owner of Endeavor Title does this all day, so this is gonna be a quick one. All right, so real quick, Brandon, here's what we got. The first and most important document in this whole pile is called the Alta Settlement Statement, formerly known as the HUD-1, and this is where every penny in the transaction gets accounted for, so this is very important.
Most important document in the settlement package.
Everybody's got to get a signed original, so you just pass around the same document over and over. Next important document, my closing disclosure. Anytime you get a mortgage loan, the lender has to give you the closing disclosure 72 hours in advance. That's a new rule. Just like the Alta is new, closing disclosure is new. And that's a very important document. This is where you find out your interest rate, your APR, your cash out of pocket, your monthly payment. To make sure there's no surprises when you get here, this comes out 3 days in advance. So Tim, on the closing disclosure, anything you want to add that's important?
Well, typically the closing disclosure is only given to the buyer and it's not shared with the seller because it has the buyer's personal financial information in there, their interest rate. So
all right, good. So buyer only.
A little bit of separation there. Here's your note.
As the buyer, I'm gonna have to sign literally 10, maybe 20 times more documents because I have all the mortgage loan documents. The seller only signs a couple key things. This is a good one, the W-9. It kind of lets the IRS know what's going on so I can get my write-offs when tax time comes, which is in exactly 1 month. It's really important to know that the seller who has a mortgage on the property, that has to be paid off before the new buyer takes ownership. Because that would be a mortgage lien on the property, right?
That's correct.
So he has a lien, it's officially being paid off, so now I can get the title free and clear of any liens or defects. That's excellent. So the important thing to notice about the deed is my name's on here. I'm not signing that. The seller's gonna sign it, transferring the title of the property to me.
Fee simple title.
Fee simple title. All right, I like it.
Okay, here you go. Moment of truth.
I'm gonna call BG&E today. I got my keys. And now I'm gonna have to write the checks, which is my cash to close. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, so now what I have to do is write the checks to the title company. Normally these are wired in advance. They're actually doing me a small favor here to let me write them a check. But I'm gonna write my cash to close, which is all of my down payment for the mortgage plus any closing costs is what I have to come up with at settlement. So that's what I'm doing now. And then maybe what might be valuable while I'm doing this is if you tell them, it seemed like the seller didn't sign much. They might have signed 2 or 3 documents.
Right.
If you just want to tell them the highlights of what the seller signed and then the bullet points of what I signed, and we'll go from there.
Sure. The seller signed the Alta settlement statement for their portion of the proceeds or what was due from the sale of their property. They have a couple title documents to sign, survey affidavit that they didn't change the property boundaries or since the property was last surveyed. Also an owner's affidavit that they didn't change the condition of title to the property by taking on any new liens or being sued in court or anything that could have popped up after they signed the contract but before settlement, which is called the gap. And then the most important thing that they're here for is to sign the deed, which is conveying their interest in the property to the buyer. But they have much less to sign, but I try to keep them involved in the process in the beginning and the end, and then so they can kind of zone out in the middle a little bit. All right, well there it is. Cash to close, the property is transferred, the settlement is complete.
Well, the other thing is that's interesting to note is the seller can sign their documents beforehand.
And they sometimes do.
Yeah, a lot of times the seller, they can't meet at the exact same day and time, or for whatever reason it doesn't work out on the calendar. The seller can sign how far in advance?
They can sign any time in advance up to the date that they executed the contract. They could execute the contract, and if they were leaving the country the next day and they were going to be away for 30 or 40 days, they could sign all the title docs, including the deed, the day after the contract was signed.
That's important to know because settlement can take a lot of shapes and sizes and forms, and it's completely changed in the last year and a half.
There's a lot of moving parts.
So this is the traditional settlement where the seller's here, the buyer's here. Normally there's the seller's agent, the buyer's agent.
The lender.
The lender often is present. But
sometimes the extended
family can be here. It's normally a big day, and it's, this is when the day I got the keys. I own this house now, and I'm paying for it. And then what documents, I know I signed a ton.
Right.
The bullet points there what were the 5 big ones?
The big ones for you as the buyer: the settlement statement, the note, the mortgage. There's most of the rest of it is just varies from lender to lender, but the note, the mortgage, and the settlement statement are the most important things that you sign.
The note, the mortgage, and the settlement statement. What's the difference between the note and the mortgage?
The note is you financially responsible for repaying the loan. That goes on your credit. The mortgage is the real estate document that secures the lien on the property, and it's a real estate document. The mortgage gets recorded right behind the deed. So the deed gets taken to the courthouse to record your interest in the property, to let everyone who's examining public record know that you're the owner. And then the mortgage lets everyone examining public record know that you have a mortgage lien on the property.
That's awesome. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over the actual settlement statement, because this is the most important document, because there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of numbers. But instead of going over all my personal stuff, I'll pick another random settlement statement, and we'll go over it line by line so you can really see where all this money's going. In my particular case, I have some unconventional things going. Bad word. Unconventional, we're talking about loans and mortgages. It actually is a conventional loan, but I have some kind of exotic, different things that aren't very common going on my settlement statement because it's an investment property, and I tweaked some numbers in here to have it shake out the way I wanted to. So
I could go over the sections without divulging your personal info.
I'll pick a cleaner one because this is pretty.
I have another one right
unconventional,
here.
Which again, hey, don't be lazy with language. Conventional, FHA, VA, all very relevant. Appreciate it.
No problem.
My copies?
Your copies.
Pretty simple. Just bought a house. So what happens at settlement, it's not some big ordeal. It's the seller signs their part, the buyer signs their part, a little money changes hands, you get the keys, and that's that. So here's one point that is fair to make. The day you buy a house, you should be really happy, because to even get engaged in the process, you have to believe that buying a house is a good thing, to even start the whole process of getting a loan, looking at houses, doing the whole thing. Then you have to also believe that you're gonna find a house that you like, throughout the process, because there's ups and downs. You see some houses, you can't find what you want, you make an offer, you don't get it, your parents don't think it's a good idea, your sister wants you to move in with her, whatever is going on. So you have to believe that it's a good idea, you have to believe you're gonna find the right one, and then you have to believe that it's gonna be worth it to write that check, take the risk, take out a loan. I owe a bunch of money now. Like, I'm on the hook for this money, but I know it's a good investment, and I'm very happy. So you should be happy when you buy a house because you believe that it was the right thing to do, that you found the right one, and that in the end, it was worth it. All right, so I just settled on the property. Gonna do a quick recap of what went down. The seller came in. He could have pre-signed or signed at the same time. In this case, he came in and signed the traditional way, but as Tim from Endeavor Title said, the seller can sign anytime. He signed the Alta and the deed, or the two big things he signed. And then I had to sign a bunch of documents. Most of them were stuff connected with my loan. But the three big things I signed were my loan docs, the mortgage, the deed, and the Alta settlement statement. And another thing to note is you're gonna get a closing disclosure that explains everything about your loan in terms of your monthly payment, your interest rate, how much cash you need to bring to closing, 72 hours before closing. That is a new, extremely regulated law that if the lender doesn't get it to you within 72 hours, you're not settling, you're pushing it out until you've had 72 hours to review that document. So there's a couple key things I just want to touch on the Alta. Today, I settled, today's March 15th, I had to pay the seller back the taxes he already paid. So on a little line item on my settlement sheet is city or town taxes from 3/15 to 6/30, because the taxes get collected every 6 months, January 1st and July 1st. So I'm paying him back for the taxes he already paid between March 15th and June 30th. He's gonna pay me back the water usage, so there's a little credit there. Then I have a bunch of bills on my side, like I have homeowners insurance, I have property taxes, I have title fees for title insurance, which I'm not gonna get into the great debate. I think it's a safe and smart thing to do. So I have additional fees, homeowners insurance, property taxes, title fees, the transfer and recordation fees, which are very expensive, that go to Baltimore City and the state of Maryland. In Baltimore City, that's 3%. I'm responsible to pay half of that. So I'm paying my half of the city transfer tax, state transfer tax, recording fees, and state recordation. And that's pretty much it. Then I cut my checks. The seller, in this case, the seller actually had to cut a check. A lot of times the seller's getting a check. But that's that. We're all squared up. And that's what happens at a settlement. So I hope that was helpful for you. When you hear the term settlement, closing, or there's a new term with the new closing disclosure in Alta called commencement, like your high school graduation, they all mean the same thing, and that's just what we ran through. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Oh, by the way, what you saw was courtesy of Endeavor Title, and this is Tim Eichhorn, one of the owners, a good friend of mine. It's very, very important that you use a really good and sound and professional title company, because they can make the process smooth or they can make the process slow and laborious and a nightmare. We've settled now over 500 deals with you guys.
Easily.
And I just want to say thank you to Endeavor Title. You do a great job for our clients and a great job for us. It's Tim Eichhorn again, owner of Endeavor Title. And if you have any questions for Tim, we'll link up his information here. And we look forward to seeing you at the settlement table.